Hello once again, YouTube. CrisstheNightbringer here, bringing you some Minecraft action. Um, so what I'm doing in this episode is I'm actually starting to build one of the cities that I'm going to be featuring in my series. So far, it looks pretty goddamn good. Um, it's actually heavily based off of Constantinople. The whole idea of it. I can't really give you much else on the information about what the city is without spoiling some of the stuff in the series, though. So, basically, what I'm just going to go through is how I build this style of city, and buildings and homes and shit. Because it actually looks pretty good in my opinion. I'm not entirely sure what you guys have to think about. Um, I guess if you could recognize one thing about this is the fact that it's actually based off of the Constantinople from the game Assassin's Creed Revelations. Um, I kind of figured out that all the buildings in that game are semi-modular, and that they all kind of like connect together, including things like walls and stuff. And so I figured out the pattern, and I've started to build a city. And if you can figure out where the hell this is in the game, that's pretty cool. This is I'll give you a hint. This tower has a gigantic chain coming out of it. But it's not the one that you blow up. This is the one that's standing. That's at the end of the game. That's still standing. And yeah, it looks pretty badass so far. I'm liking it because this will look like a real city when it's done. I plan on doing a lot of it. I plan on doing at least the entire northern part of the city on this part of the map. Across this gigantic body of water is another section of the city, obviously because I said it's based off Constantinople, and Constantinople is split right in half, kind of, by a river, a big river, or a sea. I'm not entirely sure what it is. But yeah, I'm going to be building this building here. There's a little bit more to it, but that will probably come later because the it extends over the water, and the docks kind of surround it. And maybe I'll make that another video on how I do the docks and stuff. Okay, so yes. Before you ask what texture pack I'm using John Smith. I am, however, using a modified version of John Smith because little bit of video lag. I'm using a modified version because there's a few textures I needed that didn't really come with John Smith. For instance, these two textures right here, I do believe they come with another texture pack I downloaded. I'm not entirely sure. Sorry for the sniffling. I have a cold. But I needed them because I needed like sandstone pillars, and I needed like sandstone smooth, like horizontal pieces. So yeah, I'm using that. I also use sand to represent like really nice sandstone, which in my opinion I might change later too, because there actually isn't a lot of sand on the map, because the docks go right over the edge of the map for the most part. And so yeah. But yeah, this is what I've got done so far. This was all made by me, single-handedly. And this is it. I mean, I've got a few details in. If you're wondering what all these floating lapis blocks are for, they're kind of like notes for me, because like this one says there are 2 guards. There's supposed to be 2 guards that actually patrol this. Now that is only necessary if I film in these locations, so that I have a crowd. A few of them are like put into the buildings, and that's because there are blocks from the 1.3 update that I don't have yet because I'm playing on 1.2.5 that I need to finish the building, to make it look proper. So yeah, hopefully nobody interrupts me while I'm filming this because I don't really want to start over. Yeah, that would be suckish. Like right here, these lapis blocks, these are supposed to be upside down sandstone stairs, and that will complete the look of these arches. But I don't have sandstone stairs in this current edition of Minecraft, so that's why that's up like that. So yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the modular design that these buildings have. I kind of discovered that almost all of the buildings in Assassin's Creed have like the same size for buildings. I'm going to see if I can take some pictures, because I'm playing Assassin's Creed right now on my Xbox, and like overlay them in this video, hopefully. But One thing I noticed is that all the buildings, for the most part, have like the same length. Um, some of them do not, but those, I'll get to those in a moment. But like they all have the same length, and they are all connected, kind of like seamlessly, with like a wooden like a support beam in the middle of the buildings. And so what I did is I determined that I would use that wooden support beam in both like to connect buildings, but each building would have like a face of 7 before the next support beam. So each building, if I was to build like a normal building, I'll just give you an example. Okay, so right here we have a support beam that goes in between two buildings, let's say. Right? And that would go all the way up as tall as the building is. And then 8 blocks away is another support beam. And the actual like building, like the stuff that you see with all the windows and the doors and stuff, has 7 blocks of space that I can do whatever the fuck I wanted. I think no, I didn't. Okay. So yeah, that's how these buildings. This is what like the face of one building would look like. Now, let's say I have another building next to it. I would count out 7 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then at the 8th block, I would add another support beam. So each like building face has 7 blocks of space, and each floor I have determined goes up 3 stories, or 4 blocks, 3 stories. My bad. Each building goes up 4 blocks before the next floor, and what I do to separate the floors is on the 5th, or above that floor, I put in like a cross beam of normal wood, because a lot of these buildings don't use normal colored wood. I'll get to that in a moment. And that kind of separates the floor, and you can see that on the buildings too. There's kind of like this seam in between each of the buildings, or each of the levels of the building. And so if I want another floor, I would go up another 5 blocks, right? And there's how high the second floor would be. So you get an idea of kind of how these buildings are modular. Basically, the big deal is the fact that they actually kind of overlap in a sense with these middle support beams. They kind of like conjoined by them and become one building instead of multiple buildings that are just placed next to each other. And that's the only reason this would be a problem if you were to like make a whole building pack of these and put them in World or MC Edit, because the buildings would overlap and you like might cut off some parts of the buildings and some important things, and it'll just look funky. So you kind of have to mess around with it, because sometimes buildings do like right here, there's actually sandstone that like goes underneath the support beam for this building. So you have to kind of figure out which building is kind of dominating it. In this instance, both of these buildings use the sandstone at the bottom. But here, for example, this building right here does not have sandstone at the bottom, and the support beam goes all the way to the ground. And, well, let me see if that actually happens. That actually doesn't happen, which is kind of funny. In reality... Oh, I just got assassinated. Oh, God. Fuck you, stalker. Bam, I shot him. Sorry about that. In reality... these actually don't appear. So yeah, sometimes you have to figure out which building has like the dominant support beams and support structure, because then you could figure out like this sandstone actually doesn't like I'm confused. I'm confusing myself. I'm sorry. The sandstone can sometimes like go underneath the support beams, and you have to figure out which buildings that happens to, and which support beams you have to modify, I guess. I don't really know if that's what their official name is, support beams, but whatever. So, okay. Another thing to note is that some buildings are only 3 wide, like a 3 wide block in between each of these supports. So this building goes all the way up to here, because I'm looking at it in Assassin's Creed as we speak. Oh. Yeah, let me look at that real quick. Oh, no, get out of the haystack. yes, that building only goes up that high, and I'm going to put this floor, like divisionary mark, right there. This building uses darker wood. I'll get to the different types of wood because there's a reason I'm using all different colored wood. Actually, I can talk about that right now because if you noticed, a lot of the buildings in Constantinople and Assassin's Creed are kind of painted. They're painted all sorts of different colors. Some buildings are made have like a sandstone floor. A lot of the buildings, a lot of the shittier buildings, have like this really dark wood and shitty paint jobs that it's like peeling off and stuff. So in order to represent the shitty buildings, I use the dark wood, right? Some of these buildings have white paint on it that hasn't peeled off completely, so I'm using clay. That kind of gives it the look of that paperish material that they used to make buildings out of and walls. So I'm using that. In some instances, I'm using it to represent like concrete because I think stone looks like stone, so I don't want to use that for concrete. I think clay looks more like concrete than stone does in this texture pack. That's why the sides of the docks are also clay. So I use that material for that paperish material in the buildings. And then for the painted buildings that actually like have paint jobs and like look decent, they're like yellow and orange are like the two primary colors that they use. I'm just using the birch wood from the John Smith texture pack because it's like multicolored and it kind of looks orangish. And honestly, when you look at it, you kind of get the sense that it's a nicer building than the rest. Like if you look at this building, it generally looks a little bit nicer. But let's say if you come over here, you can tell that there's a distinct difference in the style of these buildings. These buildings actually look a little bit shittier. They look more condemned, not so much of a place of living, but more of like a seaside, like dock warehouse style building. Some of these are houses. That one right there is probably not a house. That actually looks like a rented, like a warehouse of some sort. And bricks. Bricks also helps. There's like a few of the buildings have like this crappy like foundation at the bottom, and I used bricks to represent that because they are dark and discolored. Some of them have grates at the bottom, and I'll talk about some of the details as we go on. I'll talk a little bit about that tower maybe in one episode because I plan on doing a few episodes on how I build specific things in this build. But for right now, we're going to focus on this now. As you have already seen, I put the dividing block where the floor is going to be. That's basically, say, on the inside of this building, this is how tall the second floor would be. Oh, don't go in the water. But I'm not focusing on interior details because, for the most part, I'm not going to be filming the inside of every single building, so I don't need to. But what I do is I fill up the wall, and I look at the game, and I realize there's a window here, so I pop that out, and we'll fill that in with glass in a moment. And then up here, I'll fill this in too. Oh. And like I said, that's 4 blocks high. Now when it comes to roofs, I start off at the very edge of the building with half slabs, right? And from there, you're going to have to work your way in, alternating between full blocks and half slabs, so you get a really sloped rooftop. I'm using normal oak wood for all of this because it's frankly the only decent, I guess that's the only one I really thought looked good with this texture pack that matched the color scheme in the game. But we come up here and we realize there's also another window right there, slightly smaller. Now this building right here is actually kind of funny. Some of the buildings, as you can see here, go diagonal, and I realized that they stay with the modular design. Basically, you count diagonally 7 blocks, and at the 8th block, you put another one of those pillars, and it actually works very nicely because since Minecraft is all blocks, you get 7 across and 7 wide. And this is actually perfect. It actually works very nicely. You have to figure out a lot of stuff when you're building like this if you want to build it accurately like the game. That's basically what I'm doing. It's a pain in the ass because you have to determine some buildings don't even match that. There's a few exceptions. over there. That building I never finished because that doesn't match the 7-block scheme for the modular design. So it's kind of an issue sometimes with some of these buildings. So we're going to continue with this, right? And we're just going to bring this floor over. As you can see, this is very diagonal compared to that one. That's because for some reason this building has a more diagonal face on this side. But overall, it's quite okay. It still matches up with that, which is it's supposed to. Excuse me. And for this, the front of this building, there is a doorway right there, and we're gonna take this this nice colored wood, this nice colored birch wood, bring it down, and just so we know, or just so we have it ready for later, we'll extend that up. We'll extend that up all the way to the top. So yeah, we have that now. We're going to come along the bottom and put this in. There's going to be a doorway right there. In some cases, the doorways have like these arches over the top. Me, I just use a hatch to represent that. I haven't used it on every single one of these. If you're wondering what the hell this is one of those stalls that you see like while you're walking through the streets in like a tailor's shop or the blacksmith. This is one of those. In this particular instance, it's actually just a fruit vendor, so there's like nobody useful inside there. But that's kind of what that would look like. It's pretty open. Some of them are different. Maybe I'll show you a few of those in the future. But for now, we're going to come over here and knock out these windows, because there are windows there. Obviously, for the windows, you have to use a different material than glass planes, so you just use the glass block. Pretty simple. And you just pop those in. I'm going to go find a door, because for some reason, come on, there we go. For some reason, where are all my doors? Why do I have no doors on these buildings? What is happening? Okay, so yeah, I'm actually going to fill in these doors right now. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to come back over here. We'll put the door down. Oh god, the lag. It's too much. I guess we could just put it there. There. See, that's nice. And, that's actually, like, kind of decent looking. Even though it's diagonal and it's kind of awkward. It's really awkward. But yeah, you get an understanding of what that's supposed to look like. Now we're going to move up to the top of that floor. Or the second floor. Top of this building. And we're just going to add these 4 blocks again that compose the walls. Right? 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that is the entire height of the building, and what we can do now is we can knock out this, and we can knock out that, because there's 2 windows there again. And right over here, right where above the door, is a smaller window, but it still requires a glass block. In there. So, I know there wasn't a lot of detail in this one. It's quite okay. I'm going to get some glass panes here and fill in these windows. Now, like I said before, I'm not focusing on the internal spaces or the interior spaces of these buildings because I don't have to. Let's see if I can make it through this. Oh, jeez. Apparently not. Come on. There we go. Let's see. This door hasn't been finished. It's a big door, too. Okay, so why does that go all the way to the top? I guess that's okay. For these corner doors, there's going to be a few doors that open on like corners of buildings where, or like diagonal buildings, not corners of buildings, but diagonal, and they're going to be kind of larger looking anyway. I realize that a lot of them look larger, so you just walk in here and you place 2 doors there, and pretty simple. It keeps it looking, even. It's not like there's an indented shape, because if you just put the door on the inside, like this, you would have to put a block there, and then it would look kind of funky. So me, I would just put the doors on like that, and it keeps it pretty simple, it keeps it good looking. You know, it doesn't really screw up the whole design of the diagonal blocks. Also, another thing to add is these like overhanging boxes. These are pretty simple. They go out 2 blocks. For the most part, they actually use like fence posts, or I use fence posts because they're kind of open. They're not really like that enclosed. They're kind of like a place to like chill and like look out over the street. So I didn't put any windows on there because they're supposed to be graded like thatch or woven like wood in anyways for the windows. So I just used fence posts. And for the most part, these happen on the nicer buildings. Occasionally they happen on the crappier buildings, but they also look crappier. So, you know, this one looks nice. It's got a bit of an overhang. I used these logs or planks that go straight up because there isn't like actually like a wooden log that just goes up on that one. So, you know, I didn't want to make it look too heavy with the frickin' wooden logs. You know, I am going for realism with this city. So, you know. Now, I'm probably not going to go over the roof of this particular design, but I will finish up the sides of this building right here. In case you're wondering why I'm using blue, there's supposed to be a design on this, and I haven't put that in my texture pack yet, so I have to find like a design that uses blue wool and or a blue color and put it on there. So now we're going to continue with this. This is actually over the docks. So there's like these docks right here. That's why this building is kind of like over here and awkward. So don't mind that, but we're going to continue finishing this up. So let's get rid of the sandstone, and I'm pretty sure this building goes as high as the rest. And then we take our dividing floor beam and push it across, and there is a doorway right here, so we're going to get rid of that. And it's kind of awkward because you have to go down to the docks and then you walk up and you get into the door, but that's okay. And this building also is painted. Above this doorway is an arch, so we'll put that there just to make it look, you know, whatever. We could probably push that door forward, but I don't want to because it's on the ledge of that. And over here is like 2 windows really close together, so I'm just going to make it a 4 window. And another thing is that some of these buildings have torches on them. You may not notice when you're playing Assassin's Creed because they only turn on at night. They like automatically just start burning, which is fucking magical. But it's okay. So yeah, there's a torch there. These docks actually extend out and around all the way past these arches. I have not implemented the docks yet. I'll actually probably film that in another episode. I'll show you how I do my docks. Now, another thing of note above this building is I'm gonna see if I can take pictures and overlay them over this building. But another thing to note is above this building, set it to daytime, is like this overhanging thing, and it looks really, really nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this wood and we're going to bring it out. I use this wood when it comes to overhangs for the bottom because they're usually way darker than the colored painted wood. I need to grab these logs that go up. This is a nicer design, and it extends fully across all 9 of these blocks. So it's a much larger overhang, which means we can fit a little bit more detail into it. That's always nice. Let's see if this works. It's going to have to go like this. Okay. So yes, I always keep the floor of these like where the floor would normally be. Just a tip, I suppose. And before we continue, I'm actually going to grab the half slab and put it on the top crust, just so I know where the top of this is and I don't go past it. Not that I normally would, it's just, it'll help me get a better sense of how I can divide this up. It's kind of a useful trick when you're trying to figure out how to build the face of a building, how much space you have, is to build the top and bottom like thresholds, so you actually know how much space you have to work in. I don't know, it's just a simple little tip, it's not a big deal, but it helps. And what we're going to do is we're going to take fences, And a lot of this is like fence post looking stuff. Oh, nope, I am countering you. Some guy just tried to assassinate me in the game. It's one of those stalkers. I don't know if you've ever encountered those, but they just come up and they try and kill you. They work for the Templars, they're evil. I killed them. It's all good. So yes, I'm continuing building this. This is a very dark overhang too, so we're not going to use any of that colored wood and not any of the birch wood. And there, that's it. That's the overhang. Obviously, you can extend this roof block to meet the actual part of the building, like the building structure. There's one more face to this, but I'm not going to film it. I'm going to skip it, and I'll just let you see what it actually looks like. There's actually only one part of it that you would see, and that's at the bottom, so frankly I'm just going to... Actually, I will film it, because, like I said before, there's like a really big overhanging building that like comes off the side of this and jets out over the docks. So I'm actually going to build that in the next episode, the docks and that part of the building. But when all of that is completed, we'll finally get to the roof, and yeah, so stay tuned if you want to learn how to build more of this particular style. I quite enjoy it. It looks really nice. It works well with the texture pack I'm using. Of course, there's a few changes I have to make, obviously, and you know, there's a few blocks I'm waiting for that will hopefully come out in the future so that I can get my hands on them and use them in this building, or in this build. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more. I'll be posting the next tutorial in a few days, if not less. So thanks for watching, and yeah, bye. Of the city on this part of the map. Across this gigantic body of water is another section of the city, obviously, because I said it's based off Constantinople, and Constantinople is split right in half, kind of, by a river, a big river, or a sea. I'm not entirely sure what it is. But yeah, I'm going to be building this building here. There's a little bit more to it, but that will probably come later, because it extends over the water and the docks kind of surround it, and maybe I'll make that another video. Hello once again, YouTube. CrisstheNightbringer here, bringing you some Minecraft action. So what I'm doing in this episode is I'm actually starting to build one of the cities that I'm going to be featuring in my series. So far it looks pretty goddamn good. It's actually heavily based off of Constantinople, the whole idea of it. I can't really give you much else on the information about what the city is without spoiling some of the stuff in the series, though. So basically what I'm just going to go on how I do the docks and stuff. Okay, so yes, before you like ask what texture pack I'm using John Smith. I am, however, using a modified version of John Smith because, oh, little bit of video lag. I'm using a modified version because there's a few textures I needed that didn't really come with John Smith. For instance, these two textures right here, I do believe they come with another texture pack I downloaded. I'm not entirely sure. Sorry for the sniffling, I have a cold. But I needed them because I needed like sandstone pillar through is how I build this style of like city and buildings and homes and shit, because it actually looks pretty good in my opinion. I'm not entirely sure what you guys have to think about. I guess if you could recognize one thing about this is the fact that it's actually based off of the Constantinople from the game Assassin's Creed Revelations. I kind of figured out that all the buildings in that game are semi-modular and that they all kind of like connect together, including things like walls and stuff. And so I figured out the pattern and I've started to build a city, and if you can figure out where the hell this is in the game, that's pretty cool. This is I'll give you a hint, this tower has a gigantic chain coming out of it. But it's not the one that you blow up. This is the one that's standing, that's at the end of the game, that's still standing. And yeah, it looks pretty badass so far. I'm liking it, because this will look like a real city when it's done. I plan on doing a lot of it. I plan on doing at least the entire northern